Hey guys, what's up? It's Dave. I am going to go over my watch list for the week. I'm going to actually build it. I actually don't have it just yet, but I'm going to build it with you. These are just names that I have from last week. I'm just going to carry it on over. One thing that I am indeed always watching are Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, NVIDIA, and certainly Tesla. Overall, though, if I want to look at like Meta, all of these names right now, I trade off the daily. I'll look at the 65 for a shorter time frame to see if things want to turn around, and I'll execute off the 30, the 15, typically the 30-minute for execution wise. However, let's just look at the daily charts for this and build a potential list. I do not like to trade long when shorter term MAs are pointing down. Certainly when the 5 SMA is also pointing downwards, I can turn that on. It'll show on shorter time frames. However, you can see that in Meta, it's at an interesting level here. It found support here at this 580-ish level where it did prior. So I don't know what really to make of that. The shorter term trend is still down. MAs are still down. 50 SMA is still curling downward. So I'm not really interested in it in any meaningful long. Same thing with Apple. Netflix actually looks pretty solid. I do like Netflix for this week. I'm going to add that to my green list. I do like Netflix for this week. You can see that this right here is the earnings gap up, anchor VWAP from the Friday, October 18th. It is also hitting the anchor VWAP from this earnings date on January 22nd. So it continues to find supply there. You can see it has a lot of topping tails. However, the shorter term MAs are starting to point upwards. The 5 SMA is starting to point upwards. If we can even put an anchored VWAP down to this low and see how that respects the low here, if it wants to pull back. I have an anchor VWAP there. Don't ask me why. I don't remember. This anchor VWAP from the all-time highs of 1064.50. Price is above that. So buyers are becoming in control. So what I am looking for this week is if price wants to break this 968, 969 level, we might be able to get a push up to like 1,000 or so, maybe find some supply, retest that 960-ish, and then push higher. So maybe something like this. Maybe. I don't know. Having a plan. I'm not saying that's going to play it out that way this week. But overall, if the market wants to turn around, not sure. But Netflix, it does look pretty solid this week, in my opinion, potentially actionable. I do like Google also, and I in particularly like it because of this day right here, this shakeout day, this undercut. And now it's been consolidating sideways for the past 4 days since that move on Tuesday, March 18th. And it also undercut quite a bit of these lows in here too. And so it didn't find a lot of supply coming out of that, at least in the short term. So I think a good level to risk against is that low of 158.80 for me. Not financial advice. However, if this wants to chop and consolidate sideways, let the shorter term MAs start to kind of like turn around and then start to head up, especially if the 5 SMA wants to begin to do that. You can see it's flattening out already. So I think Google would be an interesting look long potentially this week. It just depends. It just depends. I would like another week of or some sort of move to push up, test at least the 20, and then come back down to retest this 167 level. To make sure that consolidation area wants to hold. And then you can risk it against that low. I can risk it against that low. We'll see. Microsoft starting to look interesting-ish. However, this does look more bear flaggy to me. We got some decent volume on Friday, but it's pushing up against the 20. So we may find potential supply here. We got a lot of trap longs above as well. So not my favorite for the week coming up. Amazon at an interesting level, but these are also still trending downwards. I'm just going to make it short and easy here. NVIDIA, watching to see where it wants to break out of this like pennant type look, this wedge type look here. The shorter term MAs are starting to kind of twig. However, the 50 is crossing the 200. I don't trade MA crosses. This would be considered a death cross though, for those that trade them. But I don't, so I'm not going to put much meaning towards it. And I would just continue to watch this level, the low of 104.77, if it wants to hold it or if it wants a continue on down. And then Tesla, it is a top look on the long side for me this week. It closed above the 10. I could see us tagging at the 20, around 265 later on this week. It is in this like consolidation level here, but so first it has to break this, in my opinion, this high of 253.37 in order to really get moving and tag 65. Then maybe we have a pullback to this area and it continues on higher. So maybe it tags 20, pull back, and then there we go. And then we can retest maybe the 200 SMA here. It would be over here somewhere. It'll pull back, hit that level, and then maybe we would get up over this anchor VWAP from the earnings here at some point in time. But really what I'm looking for are these MAs to kind of start curling upwards and find some sort of price momentum. To have Tesla turn around. However, this could be the bottom. I've heard some people say, you know, they're looking for 200s to 180. If that happens, I would be loading the boat. But that's just me. I don't think Tesla's going anywhere. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Okay, going back to my list from last week. SOUN. I do like how this is consolidating here, especially as the shorter term MAs start to twig, start to at least get close to one another. Indecision still, so most say stay away from it. I do like that it is respecting and holding this anchor VWAP from this low on Tuesday, March 11th. I'm looking for some sort of a pinch here. If it can break this 1050 level, maybe we can get to 1170 to 1180-ish, somewhere around there. That would be pretty solid. But I would need some sort of, you know, I think we had to break this 1050. So I'm going to put an alert at 1050 for SOUN. I'll put that on my green watch. Reddit, I was saying that, hey, Reddit looks like it wants some lows because it was consolidating down here. I was looking for a break of this and then for a potential gap fill. However, it's pretty obvious that this, what is it, 105.51, 105.50, 107. So this 105.50 level is a pretty obvious level, and it's also the low of this 104.11. So it's basically this gap up, and the gap is yet to be filled. It's hitting the 200 SMA and the IPO anchor VWAP at this level. So it's at an interesting level. However, the shorter term MAs are indeed down. Momentum is down. So I am not super interested in this until at least the 5 SMA starts to flatten. The odds are not in the long's favor at this point in time, in my opinion. Netflix already went over it. MP, I do like MP. Looks pretty solid. Probably one of my favorites for the week. MP and Netflix as well, and then also PLTR. That's only because I'm in PLTR. I already did a video on it. I'll probably hit it somewhere here. MP consolidation broke out, came back, and retested it. Ended with a pretty solid bottoming tail on Friday. We'll see if it wants to push higher. What we could do is we could set an anchored VWAP to this high here and wait until the average market participant gets above that VWAP. But, you know, it's pretty consolidating. So we'll see what happens if price, well, it's actually kind of there. Once it gets a little bit, I don't know, it could hit it here. So there's some trapped longs up here. We'll see if it wants to get back into this zone here from this, let's just call it 26 to 27. Or if it finds some supply and it wants to head back lower somewhere. We'll see. However, I do like MP for the potential long side for the week. So I'll keep that green. SMR, let's look at the daily. This looks bear flaggish to me. It did break the downtrend line, short-term MAs. It tagged the 200 SMA. I mean, it looks good. Like overall, it held this. I guess I'm just biased towards a bear flag. There's a lot of supply overhead. We do have the 50 SMA around 2060, so I would watch for potential supply in that area. Not my favorite look for the week. I'm going to take the flag off of that. Mara, this is accepting below this level here. If this wants to push these lows, I do think this could be a rather strong short. I'm going to keep that on my red. I have an alert for breaking these lows. We'll see how far we want to go down if that happens. Maybe 10. These levels here, right? Maybe that would hold 1036 or so. We could watch that level of interest, in my opinion. However, it's consolidating at these lows, so if it wants to wedge and continue to break down, I would be watching for that. A-Lab kind of looked like a bear flag for a second here. It broke it Thursday, but then kind of accepted back into it on Friday. So we'll see what actually wants to turn out and happen here. It is breaking that downtrend line. So we shall see. It might want to turn around. It still has that 20 EMA, heading on down. So it's not my favorite look for this week. I think it still has some work to do. Now, don't get me wrong, it can easily explode to the upside, right? But if it does that, I wouldn't care. Maybe it hits this level here, right? Pulls back to retest this breakout level and then wants to turn around. And then by that time, maybe it can hit the 50 SMA or this anchor VWAP from the all-time highs. And these MAs can start to curl upwards. It is closed above the anchor VWAP from this low, so it looks interesting. I just think it needs a little bit more work. So I'm going to take that off the red list for this week. Perch. I was watching this last week. I was saying, hey, it retested, started push away, and it had a pretty solid week. I never took action on this. It is above the anchor VWAP for the highs. It looks like it wants to retest at 720. At this point, I missed the trade. I will watch it, obviously. Maybe it wants to break out, but I would have wanted a better entry on this. Tesla, I already went over it. TGTX, watching this a couple weeks ago. I say, hey, it broke out, came back, retest. It's a potential decent entry, and it pushed away, and I missed the trade, never took it. Looks solid, continues to trend upwards. I'm not touching it though. SWTX also looks interesting. If we look at the weekly, we see these highs. It broke those highs, and then it came back into the area, undercut a little bit. But now it's starting to kind of, looks like it's kind of forming a little base here, and it might want to continue pushing higher. So maybe if we want to get like an anchor VWAP pinch from this low and this prior high and wants to continue up higher, I'd say it has to break this 54-ish level here first, to really be interesting for me. And it has a few levels of that it needs to break. So I'm going to set an alert for 5150-ish just to get my attention on it. And I do like it for the green side this week. RGR, I don't like that. I'm just going to take it off fully. MCK broke out, watching for a retest here. Maybe even if it wants to pull back to the 20, that'd be interesting. Otherwise, it just kind of grinds. Overall, I kind of missed the trade. Nothing too crazy. What is this? Checkpoint. Looks interesting, kind of broke out. We'll see if it actually wants to hold this time. We had a failed breakout in the past. Failed breakout, came back down, retested the lows, failed that to break down even further, came back and retested the highs here. So we'll see if it wants to hold this level. Might be interesting. Maybe if it breaks Friday's high, I would be interested with a stop below Friday's low. Yeah, it's decent. I'll take it. MWA. So I drew out this plan here. We'll see if it actually works. Whoa, look at that volume. What the heck happened here? That's nuts. Setting an anchor VWAP to that for sure. What? I'm curious. I'm gonna have to, actually, I don't care. change that to that color there. So I laid out this cup, hit the highs, maybe it pulls back to create a little handle and it breaks out. So it looks like that might be happening. I do like MWA. I'm going to put Netflix, MWA, and Tesla as my favorites. MP as my favorite as well. Netflix, PLTR. I'll get there at some point. MWA, I already moved it. Okay. MSTR, looking interesting here. Double, not necessarily a double bottom yet. I think it has to break this 50 SMA and these highs first. However, you know, it did double retested this 230 level at the 200 SMA at this level. It seems like supply may be drying up here. So MSTR could be a decent long. It really just depends on what Bitcoin wants to do. Root just cannot be stopped. I missed this trade. I was watching it over here. And then I got tagged out. And once I got tagged out, it did nothing but rip. Yep. Yum looks interesting, although this looks like it could be potentially setting up an H-type pattern. I don't know. That's just I don't know. We shall see. I would love a retest though. If they can break that and then come back and retest it and then hold and start pushing away, that would be lovely because I think the fundamentals on this name, I was looking at them, I think they look pretty decent. So I would want to add them to my longer term holds. Docs looks interesting, especially as it's, you know, filling in, spending time in this gap. We have a little volume pump on Friday. I don't know if it's a bear flag. I don't know if it's consolidation, but it's near these prior highs and prior levels of interest here. So we shall see what it wants to do. I do have an anchor VWAP from this earnings per green. I can put an anchor VWAP from this. Oh, didn't mean to do that. I put an anchor VWAP from this prior high as well to see how and if it wants to respect that. It's basically the same thing, but we'll see. I'll put an alert breaking these highs or getting close to those highs. Docs looks okay. Opgo, I don't know, bear flaggish, not really interested. Hood, strong move off this prior support, breaking that downtrend area that I do have drawn. Shorter term MA starting to curl up. 5 SMAs probably going up too. We have all-time high anchor VWAP at 47.20. We do also have the 50 SMA around 48.20. So I can see a little push here, maybe a little give back. I don't know if this is a bear flag. Kind of looks like a bear flag. However, all longer term momentum is still up. This is just a decent haircut of how much? I am also nearly 50%. It's fucking wild. 47%. Congratulations if you bought more. My average, I think, is around like $8 from around, I don't know, here. Maybe it's around 10 or so. I wish I had more, obviously, but I'll be holding that for long term. ALKS looks pretty decent, holding these highs, and it's flagging above that. I actually like that a lot. I'm going to put that on my green, and I'm going to put that near the top of the list for the week. I'll make PLTR my cutoff since I'm in there. Where that is, NFG, I'll be watching for a pullback to about these levels here on NFG. Maybe around there. I wouldn't mind, you know, maybe if I get a little retest. Otherwise, I missed the trade, in my opinion. Yeah, I'm not chasing that. CNP missed it. SMTC looks like it's trying to turn around. It has a huge gap it wants to fill. Or I take that back. I don't know if it wants to do anything. But potential gap to fill. It's a big old gap down. So we shall see what it wants to do. And if it wants to kind of hold that or fill it, it's holding anchor VWAP from the low. It's over the anchor VWAP from this gap down. Anchor VWAP, I think this is from the high. Yeah, from the high all the way up here. You can see it highlighted a little bit. It has that coming up. It has a 200 SMA that's just flat. 50 SMAs going down. It's kind of, you know, looks broken overall. Might have some work to do, but this thing has moved in the past, so it looks interesting. It's not my favorite though. I don't think it's an A+ setup in my opinion. It has a lot. WGS looks pretty solid. pushing away from these like breakout areas here. You can see that it failed to break out in the past. So it tagged what ended up happening. It failed to break out here. It tagged that bottom range. So it was in range and it had a couple of breakout and fails. And it tagged the opposite end range. So ranging here, look above, failed, opposite end range target, push off of it, look below this range, failed to move, and then pushed higher. And now it's holding these, and now it's starting to rotate higher. So WGS looks pretty decent. Also closed above the anchor VWAP from the high of 115.60. So this looks decent. Maybe a stop loss of 85. That's too big for me. I don't know. I'd rather it break. I would watch this in here. 106. Let's see what a 106 break would set up. Maybe then pull back and create a higher low, and you could trade this on the 65. That's what I might do. I'll put this on this week to watch. Did I like SOUN? Remind me what SOUN was looking like. I'll keep SOUN where it's at. That's Amazon chip chop, and already hit that. QUBT, I'm not trading that. It's too whippy for me. TEM looks interesting. Maybe it wants to start rounding up. We can put an anchor VWAP of this high. However, it's interesting. I'll put an alert on Friday's high, because at that point it would be breaking the 20 EMA, and then it would be, I'm going to take that VWAP off. You know, we have the inclining 50 SMA that it might hit. So Will's at 55. That's a decent percentage move. So I'll be curious about TEM this week. You know what? I can't. I'm going to be curious about SOUN too. Spotify, spot. That's a solid move. This looks pretty decent too. I'll be looking for a break of that 600-ish, 604 level. I'll put that up top. Uber, I think Uber is looking pretty decent overall. Still in range. I think, oh, actually, I do like this a lot. I lied. If we put an anchor VWAP from this prior high here, we can, oh, didn't mean to do that. It's not exact, really. We can see that price is above it, right? So Uber, actually, I like a lot. I'm going to put that up there as well. And I'm going to put that up top, especially as it, yeah, I think this 77.58 level, 77 to 78 level has to be broken for significant continued upside. But I would, you know, we could also set an anchor VWAP from this low, see how it respects it. So I do like Uber for the week as well. HIMS, I have been watching. I do like HIMS for the week. I'm trying to look for HIMS for a longer term hold as well, especially as it consolidates here. I think it needs to break this 37, 38 level to really get going. But then we have this 43, the anchor VWAP from the high. However, you know, if this wants to base, and this could be the lows here, and especially look at that volume on Friday. So interesting, might get going here. I'd be interested in HIMS, especially if it wants to break this 35 for a shorter term. Let's look at the 65 real quick. You see how it's consolidating here, right? So selling pressure is starting to slow. 5 SMA looks like it may want to start crawling upwards. So HIMS looks pretty solid. And then DV, this is on my short watch. I will put that on my short watch for the week. So I guess I'm mostly long biased. A lot of these names look long, potential longs. Netflix, Uber, HIMS, MWA, Mueller Water Products, Tesla, MP, Materials Corp, ALKS, Alkermes, however you say it, don't know. Gene, DX, WGS, TEM, SOUN, Spotify, DV, and PLTR. I think those are the top looks for the week. That's what I will be focusing on. Hopefully that is helpful. Thank you for your time. Manage your risk, prepare for your week, stay focused, and don't get too chopped up. Later.